like to begin with a reading, 2 Corinthians 11. 2 Corinthians 11, starting at verse 23. Let me give you a moment to get there. 2 Corinthians 11, verse 23. Paul is writing, he says, "Are they servants of Christ? I speak as if insane. I more so, in far more labors, in far more imprisonments, beaten times without number, often in danger of death. 5 times I received from the Jews 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. A night and a day I have spent in the deep. I've been on frequent journeys, in dangers from rivers, dangers from robbers, dangers from my countrymen, dangers from the Gentiles, dangers in the city, dangers in the wilderness, dangers on the sea, dangers among false brethren. I have been in labor and hardships through many sleepless nights, and hunger and thirst, often without food, and cold and exposure. Apart from such external things, there is the daily pressure on me of my concern for all the churches." I want you to ponder in just a second as we look at our first verse on the slide. Where did Paul get his comfort? How did he get through all of that and keep his focus? And you just ponder. You go, I wonder. He knew the Old Testament, of course, so maybe this would have been a verse that would have been in his heart many times as he suffered, where Isaiah said, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be anxious. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Maybe that was a verse that resonated in his heart. And you can think of others. I don't have others up here, but I thought, there was Psalms 23:1, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And so many times David expressed his confidence. And you just kind of wonder, because Paul did not get this strength from himself. He had a strength that rested in Scripture, in Christ, if you would. And I think, okay, that's something to ponder. That's something good to think about, because life is tough. Well, let's not pretend that it's not tough, but this is boot camp is what we're in. That's the way I like to refer to it anyway. So there are times when life just rolls upon us and we feel overwhelmed and we just look forward. We can't really see what's coming because the future is not clear. Incidentally, the future is never ever clear. Never. Sometimes we look in the future and we have an optimistic outlook because we think what is coming is clear, and we think we know what's coming down the pike. We think we understand, but that's not always true, is it? Other times we sit around and we kind of try to prognosticate the future, and it looks all dark and cloudy and foggy and scary. And in any case, it's not clear. We don't know. So what life does is it tests our faith. It tests our resilience, our resolve, our determination to be Christ-like, to hold up, to carry our cross, to follow in His footsteps. Life is just hard. I mean, you just have to accept that. If we're expecting something different, and yes, there are some bright times, I get that, but overall, it's a booger. And the light, those who understand, those who are wise, grow through the training. That's the purpose of it. Now, that's not the subject of this lesson. So anyway, we look for that silver lining, and that silver lining is hard to see sometimes, isn't it? Sometimes you can look out there and you go, oh yeah, I get it. This and this is going to happen. Most of the time you see the silver lining in that perfect 20/20 hindsight. And you go, oh, okay. So this is a true story. This story is not 2 months old. It's an acquaintance of mine through my volunteer work. And he came after we were leaving at the unit the other day. This was about 2 months ago. And he said, man, I just got called into the office, told my job is no longer needed. I had 2 weeks. He had been there multiple years. I'm not talking about 2 or 3 years. I'm talking about 15 plus years. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He said, but I know it's going to work out. I said, Josh, that's a good attitude. 2 weeks or so later, he says, would you believe it? I got a job. And this job pays about $12,000 a year more than the one I lost. Now tell me, Josh doesn't see the silver lining in what initially looked like a hopeless case. 3 kids at home, a wife, a house, a mortgage, the whole story. And on day one, it's like, I just got my pink slip. 2 weeks later, it's just, I just got a $12,000 a year raise. That's the way silver linings work. You're in it, you go, oh, this is horrible. And then you find out, hey, it wasn't all horrible. So think about Job. And we're not going to elaborate horribly a lot on these, but Job, He's listening to servant after servant after servant come and say, you lost all of this, you lost all of this, you lost all of that. Life is horrible, life is over. And he's there and he's in the depths. He's, scraping his boils with potsherds, and his wife comes up and says, why don't you curse God and just die, get it over with? I mean, you can't think about getting much lower, can you? It was hard to see the silver lining. Now, you and I know the last two chapters, so we know the silver lining. We know that things worked out. Joseph, he's a kid. He's 15 maybe? I forget the exact age. And he's going to check on his brothers. He's got some mean brothers. You think you've got mean siblings? Now, everybody raise your hand. If you had siblings, they were mean. In the story. They were rotten. They were horrific. In the story, right? How many times have you been sold into slavery? Mm-hmm. You're still at home living in your cushy bed, playing with your games and doing what you do. That's it, right? Joseph had a hard time. Threw him in a pit, sold him off to a bunch of strangers, and it's over. Gets a good job, and he goes, okay, I've kind of found my groove. And then Potiphar's wife gets all stupid on him, and now he's in prison. You think he saw the silver lining? You think he really saw everything that was coming? And the silver lining, incidentally, is not what you think it is, because if you're materialistically minded, and here's your test, am I spiritually minded or am I materialistic minded? If you thought, well, yeah, he got a silver lining. He became number 2 to Pharaoh. He was the next richest man in all of Egypt and had all of that power. Okay, you're still materialistically minded. Because Joseph told us the spiritual lesson in Genesis chapter 15. I can't give you the exact verse, but his brothers came to him and he said, you meant it for evil. God meant it for good. And he wasn't talking about his position in Egypt. He was talking about him serving the beginning of the Jewish nation. That was the silver lining. And then you can talk about Esther and all that she went to and the threats and all of that stuff that happened. And you go, do you think she saw it? Do you think she figured it out? Do you think she said at the very beginning when evil, what was that? I'm going to get my names mixed up. And he's going to have them all killed, Mordecai, and that was his uncle. Help me out with the names. Anyway, pardon? Yeah, Haman. Was that it? Did I get that right? Okay. And she goes, oh no, this is totally cool. I know he's trying to kill all the Jews, but it ain't going to happen. No, she said, y'all need to fast before I walk into the king because I haven't been called and he didn't hold the scepter out to me. There's only one other rule, and that's my execution. But I'm willing to put my life on the line for the good of my Jewish nation. Wow. And she found the silver lining on the other side of that scepter, right? And then you can just think of many, many others. The silver lining, my point is, when you're in the middle of the turmoil, when it's hurting, when it's painful, it is hard to see. It's hard to anticipate. Usually it's a hindsight's 2020. You look back and you go, oh, okay. I get how that works better. So in the loss, which I put in parentheses there, letting go of the past, because that's what loss is. Only loss is not just letting go of the past in a voluntary way. Loss is being forced to let go of the past, because had it been our choice, we would not have suffered that loss, and loss has negative connotations with it, right? So loss is forcing us to let go of the past, because in order to take hold of the future, you have to let go of the past. And in that letting go of the past, that is where the seeds of a new future are planted. That's where you get to learn to be happy in a new way. And I got that phrase from an author who may have authored his last book because he's going blind. And in the process of losing his sight, he said, I'm learning to be happy in new ways. And I thought, wow, is that not profound? I mean, it's easy for me to sit around and go, well, my schedule didn't work out today. I guess I'll do something different. That's not very significant, is it? But when you have a man who is literally going blind, literally losing his sight, and will not be able to do post-it notes anymore and all the little things that we take for granted, and he says, God's got this. I'll learn to be happy in some new ways. He knows that in the loss, the letting go of the past, which includes his vision, the seeds of a new future are planted. And he has a determination to press forward. And so we get these seeds planted, and then courage and faith and persistence must water those seeds. That's the only thing that can water those seeds. That's the only thing that can make tomorrow a better day than yesterday. We pray, Lord, help me be a better Christian today than I was yesterday. It's totally possible. You absolutely do it. But we cannot do it if we get caught up in the trap of whining. We can't do it if we get caught up in the trap of, oh, I'm a victim. Life never works out. Everything's against me. There's a whole lot against you. That's true. We walk a straight and narrow path. And on a straight and narrow path, that means there's a lot of obstacles. You are correct that there is a lot against you. That is not a misconception in your mind. And so the only way we're going to plant those new seeds of learning to live life in a new way at a higher level, to be a better Christian today than we were yesterday, is to water those seeds with absolute courage, which kind of means I can't see the faith future coming forward, but I know God does, and I'm following Him. I mean, just absolute total trust and faith. When God set this up, He knew what He was doing. I don't understand it all. I know you don't either, but I'm going to stay with Him, and I'm going to water those seeds because I know they'll grow. I know there's a better way ahead. Now, maybe on the other side of the tombstone, but that's fine because we're eternal beings. We're not just physical beings. So we deliberately chose the fire. Have you ever stopped to think about that? I'm going to have to qualify that just a little bit. I'm going to say, we deliberately chose it. Christ said, if anyone wishes to come after me, what did He say? Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow Him. Who wished it? We did, right? I want to be a Christian. I want to be the best Christian I can ever be. I want to grow. I want to be, the next Moses. I want to be the next Paul. I want to be the next Peter. You ladies might have said things like, I want to be the next Esther or the next Ruth. I want to be the next Mary. I want to be, something like that. But we all have our ideas of what great Christianity is. And I'm going to be that kind of disciple. We chose it. If anyone wishes to come after me, we wished it. We picked it up. We said, I want the crucible. Give me the crucible. Give me the fire. Bring it on. I can handle this. Did we really? Or did we buy a bill of goods? I think a lot of people bought a bill of goods. They said, if you'll become a Christian, your life is going to be so happy. You're going to be, let me give you my three basics because you know how to do it. You're going to have the love that surpasses knowledge, Ephesians 3:19, right? You become a Christian. And you're going to have the peace that passes understanding, Philippians 4:6 and 7. And you're going to have the joy inexpressible, full of glory, 1 Peter 1:8, right? If you become a Christian, that's on your path ahead. That is absolutely true. That's biblical. I just gave you three scriptures for it. However, most of us didn't think that followed intense, difficult, carrying my cross training. I have an idea that most of us, when we initially converted, did not really think that we were taking up the crucible deliberately on purpose. And we didn't think, look, Christianity is not about present ease. It's about taking the ore of my humanity and putting it into the crucible of God's will, the fire of His Word, and letting it burn and melt us and bring our dross to the top so that it can be scraped off and that what's left is the purest gold that we can be. Now that's a whole different analogy. I wonder how many people would get converted if we preached that lesson up front and invited them into that kind of a routine as opposed to the more little acceptable, pleasant one that we usually do. So we choose to follow the steps of Jesus through, I'm going to put in some of Psalms 23 language there. We choose to follow Jesus through the valley of the shadow of death. That's our choice. That's what we said. And sometimes that valley is so dark, it's like somebody put a blindfold on. Did you ever play that game? I hated it. It's almost like the trust game. Where three or four of your friends get behind you and you're supposed to just fall backwards and trust that they catch you. I don't think I've ever done that. I don't think I ever will do that. The other one is where they blindfold you and you can't see nothing and all you have is the feel of somebody's hand leading you. That's all you got. And you don't know what's getting ready to happen. And I know some funny old games from the 1970s and 80s before we had video games all that much, right? You can do some fun stuff there, but nonetheless, that's kind of the way it is when we go through this dark valley with Christ. Is sometimes it is so dark we don't see anything. All we feel is His hand in ours, and we're going forward. That's all we got. That's faith. That's total trust. That's total surrender. So we have our role model, Christ. We fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before Him endured the cross. What came before the joy? Everybody go to the cross. Despising the shame, sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. His unwavering focus, that is our aim. That's the role model for us that we're trying to, I gotta have that same unwavering focus. Even if we have to sweat as though we have drops of blood, we're still going to trust Him. We're going to hang in there. We're still going to say, Thy will be done. Now that's the attitude that's going to get on the other side of the tombstone and hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. The person who can be in that place, sweat as drop his blood, the agony is so intense, I don't know how anyone could ever survive this. Please let this cup pass. And in the midst of that agony, be able to say what Christ said. Not my will, but Thy will be done. That's tough. That's exactly what we signed on for. To be trained, developed, cultivated, tested, worked, put through the crucible to do just exactly that. So we're going to be wise. We need to pick our battles. Let's clarify that a little bit because there are some problems that do not have a, let me say, practical solution. They're just not there. Let me give you two quick examples. Hebrews 9:27, it's appointed that a man wants to die. Now, I thoroughly believe that a person who uses their brain and does a little study can expand their health span, but none of us are going to defeat death. No, I get it. We defeat death in Christ in the resurrection, but I mean otherwise. So using some wisdom, we can understand that we can live a healthier life, but we're still going to die. Whether I die at 60 or 80 or 90 or 100, I don't know. But I know it's coming, right? I can't fix that one. Not that sense. Ecclesiastes 9:11 is the one where he says time and chance happens to us all. And that's right. And I can't stop that. I'm on the way home today and I get a flat, okay? Minor time and chance, but it's going to upset my schedule. And you know, a big old lazy boy like me would want to get out and change a flat in this kind of heat. I might be looking for somebody to call and let them come change my flat. There are just things you can't, it just happens. You know, you've got your week planned and then things come up. This is the way life works. But some choices amidst the unchangeable are better than other choices. So I'm doing a real quick example. I want to move on. But you're in the middle of deep grief. Grief hurts. There is nothing that I'm going to really recommend about grief. It's unavoidable. You got to go through it when it happens. But do you know stories of people who got into intense grief? And again, we don't mean to discredit their grief at all. But because it hurt so bad, they chose to go to the bottle of whiskey and numb their grief. And then they got caught in a cycle and they became alcoholics. See, bad choice. I highly recommend that you get some counsel and you learn to cry through your grief because the Bible says we weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice, Romans 12:15. But you can make good choices in unchangeable situations. You can make bad choices in the unchangeable situations. And then there are some things that do have a practical solution, and that's where we like to focus a little more. Our thing is not that there's not a practical solution. Our challenge is the emotional challenge. This is a common hurdle. If you have fallen into the trap of the emotional challenge and you can't get over it because your emotions get in the way, please don't think, oh, I'm a total failure. You're totally human. And it happens all the time. And the person who can face the emotional challenge and walk through it, around it, over it, under it, is the exception. Now you can become that exception. That's the good news. But you just have to get brutally honest with you. And this is a trick thing. Another little chase a squirrel for just one sentence or two. Until you get this from within you, and it wakes up and it sprouts, if I can say it that way, within you. And it is your moment of, oh, I get it now. Then nothing I say is going to make a difference from here on. I'm going to tell you the right thing, and it's going to be good words, and it's going to wiggle your eye. You know, you're going, oh yeah, it's kind of cool. But until it opens up inside of you, and you have that aha moment, next few points, you're going to go, that's stupid, and that's okay. I wish I knew the answer to that, but not even Jesus himself could reach into a disciple's heart and make them have that moment of realization. He couldn't do it. He could tell them point blank, word for word, exactly what was coming. And until they're ready to open up to it and be one with it, right over the top of their head. And again, that's not a criticism. That's an explanation of what humanity is. And we've all done it. And we've all been human. And we all still are human. So here's the way it goes. So we have a problem. There are practical solutions. But we have this emotional thing. And the emotional thing is this. It's a whiny thing. And I don't know what, I think everybody's got a whiny gene or something. And it's, well, I've tried a million things and nothing works. So I get this part from Tony Robbins, not exactly like I'm doing it, but this is where the idea comes from. He says, oh, really? You've tried a million things. List them for me. Oh, you can hear the backpedaling now, can't you? Well, you hear the brakes hitting on because here's the actual math on it. This isn't Tony Robbins here. This is just me. If you tried a million things and you put 25 of those things on one sheet of paper, that would be 40,000 pages of your million things you've tried. And if you allow 500 pages per volume, that would be 80 volumes of books that you tried to solve that problem with a million. I've tried a million. No, you haven't. I haven't either. Nobody on earth has ever tried a million things. That is nothing but whiny, self-justifying, give me some salve to ease my guilty conscience, let me be a victim mentality. That's all I've tried a million things is. I know it's pretty blunt, but let's just call it what it is. If you could try 30,000 things. I'm geeky. I played the math here. I did it. I got my calculator out. So you try one legit idea every day to solve this problem I got. Name the problem you want. And you did one a day for 80 straight years. That gets you up to a whole 30,000. Way off a million, isn't it? Nowhere near a million. You think most people could literally list 100 different valid, sincere, thought out constructive attempts to solve a single problem? I want you to just name one single problem you have in your life. I don't care what it is. Name one single problem. Like, I don't get the perfect cup of coffee yet. Okay? List me the 100 different brands you've tried in search for that perfect cup of coffee. Well, I tried Starbucks. That Veronica, that's the wrong word, but I like to mess with it. That didn't work. I tried Folgers. That wasn't it. Now, I know some of you are going, wait a minute, Folgers is good coffee. No, it was Maxwell House. There's got to be Maxwell House, right? Okay. No, actually, it's Pablo's, which Sam's quit carrying, so I don't know what's going to be the next one. But anyway, no, most people have tried 5 different coffees and that's it. You're like, okay, there's more out there. There's a whole globe of coffees out there. And you tried 5 and you're telling me, oh, I can't find the right. No, don't do that. Really. You got a problem. I really have to be careful. I don't mean to dismiss and discredit the problem. I'm like, go down to the Dollar Tree and for $1.25, buy one of those little black and white dotty looking journals and just for $1.25, write down, okay, I tried this idea. And then make a note. Didn't work, worthless. I might look at it again. And then come to me later on and go, okay, smart aleck preacher, here it is. My 100 ideas. Is it going to happen? If I was a gambling man, I'd put a $100 bill on the table and tell you nobody's going to get it because I'm not even going to do it, even though I think it's a good idea. You just don't quit. It's the idea. You keep going, you keep going, you keep going, and you cannot, this is the emotional challenge, you cannot let yourself find solace in victimhood. And that is an American virtue right now. Oh, I'm a victim. So what? As I've said a million times before, I don't want a trophy for that. So when you get up to somebody who's all stuck in their pessimism and they're just, like, don't even go there with them. Leave them alone. He who corrects a scoffer gets dishonor for himself, and he who reproves a wicked man gets insults for himself. Do not reprove a scoffer. He will hate you. Reprove a wise man, and he will love you. Just let him go. They say if you try to save a drowning man, you've really got to be trained, or he will bring you down and drown you too. You'll both die. Okay. You get a hold of a scoffer, you get a hold of a pessimist, you get a hold of a whiner, you get a hold of a victim, and they are convinced that it is unchangeable. Watch out. They will take you down with them. They will beat you up with that. Let me just move on. But I want you to be polite. Just be polite. Just nod. Okay. Just to kind of do that thing. Oh, you poor thing. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, evil companions corrupt good morals. And we often, and correctly so, we think of evil companions corrupts good morals. And we think of that in the context of, I don't need to be hanging out with drug dealers. They're going to mess me up. I don't need to be hanging out with thieves. They're going to mess me up. And that's all true. I don't need to be hanging out with people who curse. That's going to mess me up eventually, So you do that. And that's all true. But it's also, you don't need to be hanging out with people who have a bad attitude. Because that bad attitude will rub off on you too. And if they are defeatist, whiny, victimhood, embracing, pessimistic people and you hang around them, guess what's going to rub off on you? Now, if that's what you want, then that's the people to hang out with. So there is a way through. Now, in 1 Corinthians 10:13, I really believe he's talking about temptation to sin. But he says God's going to provide a way of escape so that you may endure it. I think all the situations have a way of escape. Sin, obviously, but other situations, there's a way through. There's a way to get to the other side. You just got to step back. You got to look at it. You got to assess it. You got to plan, and you got to move forward. And you got to make your best step. And don't put it in concrete, as they say. Just make your best step. You get a step out there, and you see some things different. Change your plan if you need to change your plan. Change your strategy a little bit. Nothing wrong with being wise. But learn that the bumps are what you climb on. There's a book by that title. It was written back in the 1980s. It's an excellent book on how to deal with the challenges of life. And it's just that simple. The bumps are what you climb on. There are our challenges, our opportunities, though they are in disguise. So we look ahead. We just look ahead. We keep going forward. And we understand that sometimes the blessing God's have in mind for us is absolutely not the blessing I was looking for. So this is where Paul had his thorn in the grace. We're at 2 Corinthians 12:9 and 10. I've run out of time, so let me just summarize it. And he's praying for relief from that thorn in the flesh. And God says, my grace is sufficient for you. And then Paul goes on to say, I'm well content with weakness, insult, distress, persecutions, with difficulties for Christ's sake. For when I'm weak, I'm strong. So we have our ideas of how I want this situation resolved. Absolutely, I have my idea. And God says, but I got a better idea. I want to teach you a lesson you hadn't thought about yet. And now is where faith comes in, right? If he's going the direction I want him to go, that's one thing. He's going a direction I don't think I want to go, that's a whole nother thing, and I got to go it. So you got to look for the gift. Victory is always on the other side of battle. That's the only way it works. Look it up by definition. Victory is not somebody giving you a present. Victory is not you claiming you won because some other team forfeited. That's not a victory. Victory only comes after a battle, after a competition, after you defeat a challenge. That's the only way you can get a victory. That's it. We sing victory in Jesus. We don't get that sitting in a dugout doing nothing. So diplomas, easy illustration, always follow years of education. That's the way it's supposed to work anyway. And also good health follows wise exercise and a good diet. That, you're going to have your victory there. So what you do is you learn to see the gift beyond the challenge like Christ did. So God, he's not against us, but he doesn't coddle us. He's not our grandpa. Grandpas do some coddling. We had some fun. But God's not my grandpa. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Okay, I like that verse. I think that's a great verse. So what should I expect of God? If God created us to sharpen one another, what should I expect God to be doing to me in my life? I think sharpening would be a really good answer here. So when we have greatness, victory always follows the battle. Heroes are not made in recliners when they're snoozing. The wise are looking for the struggle. This is, well, I got to hush here too. Another little short squirrel. I don't know why in the world our young people are running away from responsibility as though it's something horrible, wicked, and bad. Because in responsibility is where you prove yourself, and it's where you get your opportunities, and where the people up the ladder look down and go, this young man, this young woman has really been responsible. Let's raise them up a little bit. But the young people that have been running and running and running and hiding and sitting in the bathroom playing with their phone for 6 hours, we don't look at that person and go, wow, they've been hiding in the bathroom playing with their phone for 6 hours. Let's promote them. They would be a great manager. The people that rise to the top are the people that learn the value in the struggle, embrace the struggle, do the best they can, and learn from that struggle. We reject the lie of Satan that the so-called good life is a life of ease and comfort and recreation. I just lay around my old fat self in my recliner drinking my tea, flipping through my Facebook because I don't like TV. We adopt a new paradigm. It's a whole new crazy way of thinking. Suffer hardships with me as a good soldier of Christ Jesus. That's who rises to the top. That's who has the courage to keep going. So let's do this one quickly. Tears aren't wrong. I'm out of time. I can't elaborate on these. Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet. All of these people had times of tears, and they persisted through the tears. I do not want you to think that tears are wrong. There is a time to cry. Grieving must be gone through. I don't care if we're talking about a little grief or a big, major, life-changing grief. Don't medicate it. Go through it. Accept it as part of life. And it takes courage to do that. But you got to take that crucible head on, and you got to diligently pursue the growth, and the growth is tough. So it is possible. So just reflect, survive, cultivate struggles. You're going to afford you that, keep your focus there, walk through it. And here's where we're quit, because it's time to quit. Never, never, never Can I do that again? I kind of like that one. Never, never, never give up. If you fall, get back up, dust yourself off, and keep going. So as we sing, all things are ready. Come to the feast. The baptistry is ready. If you haven't put Christ on in baptism yet, we're here to help however we can. While we stand and sing.